Great deck, really gave a great account of himself, going all the way to grand finals is such a huge achievement, and that is something you can boast about for a long time to come. Azul, great deck, great player, great techs, really earned the victory. So what we're going to do now is have a little bit of a chat with Azul and find out some of his stories from the tournament. Okay, so after a pretty exciting double best-of-5 series, we are here with our winner, Azul. Congratulations, you've just won the Players' Cup free.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels pretty good. Definitely was waiting around to finally hit some Pika ROMs, and I finally got hit a couple and clean them up pretty fast, which is what I expected.
Yeah, it was quite a Pika ROM fest at the end. I mean, going into that finals game, you'd already 3-0'd a Pika ROM, and then you're going in there, you're going for the losers bracket, so you've got to reset the bracket to win, but it's Pika ROM. How confident, we were feeling pretty confident for you on this side, how confident were you going into that match?
I mean, I was a little bit less confident going into the losers finals because I hadn't actually played the matchup a whole ton. It was more theoretical. And obviously it should be good, and it is good, which is what I expected. And I was like, all right, maybe they can squeak out a game here or a game or two if it's I get a really slow start, or if they can do some cheesy stuff. But it's really hard to have a really slow start with Rapid Strike, because even if you don't find the VMAX, you can just hit with the V, and then of course there's a karate belt in there to rely on if you fall too far behind. So I wasn't 100% confident in going to the losers finals, but then once I played that, going into the winners finals, I started to play a little bit more loose, not as disciplined for what I knew about the matchup, to try and see how I could how far I could push the matchup to be as favorable as possible with going for 6 prize turns and stuff like that.
That sounds pretty good. Now, we did a little bit of counting before we got you in here, and I think you ended the tournament on a 12-game win streak, 12 games in a row won. You picked Urshifu VMAX, which is a brand new deck from the new set battle styles, not really a huge amount of testing beforehand. What was that thought process of, I'm going to bring a brand new archetype to such a big, important tournament?
It's just a very versatile deck, and it's not too much more powerful than a lot of the decks out there, but at the end of the day, it's still Pokemon, so as long as you know the deck you're playing is good, you have some idea behind what deck you want to play, and it's going to be good into the meta, and Rapid Strike is pretty just an overall good deck, against so many things, so it's got very few bad matchups, and even the bad matchups you can sometimes just tech for, like the Phoebe, to help with Luke Metal and Decidueye, which I didn't play, because I talked with Fouché, actually, and me and Fouché actually worked on this list the weeks leading up to the event. We were just we don't think Luke Metal's going to show up. We don't think Decidueye is going to show up. We expect Pika ROM, so we put the Mimikyu in, and we expected Eternatus, because Eternatus, I think, is still, besides the Rapid Strike matchup, is such a powerful deck, so we want to be able to beat that. Or we think probably the Australian players are going to bring Pika ROM, because they've been all over Pika ROM the last, I don't know, 4 months, who knows how long. So the Australian players are probably doing Pika ROM, so having a good matchup there is good, and then you can beat pretty much anything else if you just you have you can have a game plan and a strategy or an out to pretty much any matchup. So there's no bad matchups, so may as well just play this deck that is just overall good against potentially everything.
I mean, it sounds like you really had your strategy locked down there. It seems like you'd fought through the matchups, and you were right. There was no Decidueye in the tournament. We did see a couple of Zamazenta in ADP lists, but we didn't actually see any of those Luke Metal decks you're talking about. So not playing Phoebe, I mean, it certainly paid off. One of the interesting things about your run, you lost in winners round 1. So whereas your grand finals opponent had to win 4 matches to get there, you had to win 7. You had the longest possible route. Were there any rivals or particularly awkward matchups you had to face up against in your run through the losers bracket?
I guess the ADPs, of course, are really annoying. I had to play against 2 of those. And I the round 1 against Spiritomb. I didn't play very well my first 2 rounds. I just played poorly, against the Victini. If I played better, I think I would have just won. I had a tough draw in game 3, or a tough couple turns in game 3 where I was whiffing switch cards, which was of course annoying, but I think if I just played better overall in that set, I would have won. Against the Spiritomb in the first round of the loser bracket, I also didn't play great. I managed to squeak that one out though. And then when I hit the ADPs, I don't know if I was playing to the matchup or a little bit, or playing to what do I know of them as players, but I feel when I hit the ADP, I started playing way better. When I hit the ADP players, maybe I'd woken up by then, and was in the mode or in the groove to play the game at that point. I don't know what it was, but once I had once I started hitting the ADPs, after I beat the Spiritomb, things I started just playing better, and then of course hit Tord, and then maybe playing playing to the potential of the player's skill level is also like a thing, like a mental thing for me. So I definitely played well against Tord. And then when I got to the Pikarom players, I started misplaying again, but I think I was just kind of super confident at that point. I was a little bit tired, a little bit worn out, and I knew there was like some room for me to make mistakes or play a little bit more loosely in the games. So I didn't play perfect against the Pikarom players, but I knew it was just like a good a good matchup from there. So as far as like rivals or anything goes, like I don't know, nothing really in the tournament overall. It always feels good to beat ADP. So whenever I go up against ADP, it's always good to beat it. I'd prefer never to play against it, but when I play it, I hopefully beat it, and that always feels good. So it was nice to take out the ADPs.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can take down an ADP. I mean, your game against Spiritomb was a real highlight of the tournament for me. There was that crazy game where I think there was some huge KO out of nowhere in game 2, which was the one game you dropped there, and
yeah.
you navigated that match really well. That must be very scary because Spiritomb can come out of nowhere. Was there a real highlight of the tournament for you? Is there a moment or two that really stand out through your runners? I'm going to remember that.
I mean, I guess just not dropping a game to the Pikaroms is pretty cool, even though it is such a good matchup. Like, it's also cool. It's just cool to, like, you know, go 9-0 against the Pikaroms. But I guess nothing in particular too much, though. Not really. Beating the ADPs as well. I don't know. Like, beating ADP is always just, it feels good to just beat ADP. That's basically, it feels good to beat ADP. The 9-0 against the Mewtwo, or the Pikaroms, even though it is, I mean, they wanted to use Mewtwo. They didn't want to actually use their Pikarom. But yeah, 9-0 against the Pikaroms that were only trying to attack with Mewtwo also felt pretty good.
Yeah, I think you had that really well. You had your Mimikyu, you had your Jirachi. Every time it looked like David was going to catch a little bit of a break and actually get to attack with them, you seem to always have the answer right there. Now, people that know you know you're not really a stranger to playing online. You're a bit of an online presence in the community. How does playing an online tournament like this compare? Because you've had a lot of real success in-person tournaments. How do these online tournaments compare for you?
I mean, it's definitely a little bit different. Like you're kind of chilled out a little bit more because I'm just like at home in my room. But once, you know, we're getting ready to play the first round of the global finals, it felt like I was about to go into a top 8 of a regional or an IC or something like that. I felt like it felt the same way. Like it didn't, that feeling was still there. Which is, I guess, good and bad, because I definitely gets on, like, it makes me a little bit nervous for that feeling. Like that's like the nervous feeling, the anxious adrenaline kind of rush feeling. So it's like overall, if it wasn't there, I'd probably be a little bit better off in my play. But I mean, it was cool to feel that feeling again, because it's been so long since been playing at like a high stakes level at a real life tournament. So I mean, that was cool. But it's not too much different at the end of the day. You're still just kind of playing Pokemon. But yeah, a little bit more lax. Like especially like the Players Cup, though, it's a huge tournament, and it kind of feels like, you know, once we get down to the end of it, like I did, it just kind of feels like you're at, you know, a top 8 in a regionals.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic achievement. I mean, you've had a lot of achievements. How does this one stack up? You've won some really big tournaments. Is this one on that level for you?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think as far as like competitiveness goes, it's at least, it's as difficult as it is to win a regional as it is to win this tournament. And there's so much more, it's so much more room for, like, there's so many qualifications, right? There's like the qualifier, and then there's the regional qualifier, and then there's, once you get to the global finals, it's a double elimination bracket. So there's so much more room for the better players to succeed, that it is almost like a more competitive tournament in that aspect. There's like a little bit more room for error, but like that's something that comes up so often with card games. Like that's why best 2 out of 3 is so much better than best of 1, because like the more chances you give the better players, the higher chance that they're going to come out on top, right? So it almost feels like it is almost a harder tournament to succeed in. Almost, it's like at least as hard as like a regional level event. I think, you know, when compared to something like the ICs or Worlds, it's not quite there, but it's at least on the level of like a regionals for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, congratulations. It's a great run. We could say that you won 12 games in a row to end it. We could say that you 6-0'd in the finals. I want to see Dave game. We could say that you brought a brand new archetype that you had not much time to test. No matter how much testing you tried to do, there's very limited time, and took down the tournament. But really, just congratulations. That was a fantastic run to watch.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So just a huge congratulations to us all there. A fantastic win with a brand new deck. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Urshifu, the Rapid Strike VMAX, is here to stay, right, Joe?
Yeah, it's really shaken up the meta, ruffled a few feathers. Eternatus